and it's solar charged. He's got a battery in here,
Side by side.
which isn't compatible with the Lithionics battery. George inspired, but once I get the courage to...
AC running on batteries.
Right. Each battery cage has over 20 screws.
Medford, Oregon, we're here again with Doug, and so happy because he is doing amazing things to his van. Today we travel from the cool Oregon coast to blazing hot Medford. And the only reason that I would do this is to meet up with my partner in crime. The reason I call Doug my partner in crime is because we have the same year and model of Campervan. It's a Pleasureway Ascent, 2018, and that is the short version of the Mercedes chassis. Over the years, we've kind of caused each other to buy some expensive upgrades, and it's been really nice for me because he's much more knowledgeable on all things mechanic and electronic, and so he's helped me a lot. I'm going to do things a little differently in this video because of a couple of issues that I had. It was extremely hot when we got to Medford. It was about 100 degrees. And my phone kept shutting off because it would overheat, and I would put it in the refrigerator and then take it out again. So I don't know what I might have missed, but I also had an audio glitch. And I have no idea what caused this. Maybe some of you smart guys will know. I'll maybe include a piece of it so you can hear what I'm talking about. But I'm going to go in and out and kind of try to summarize the things we talked about and keep things moving. Doug, where should we start?
As the process of my theme this year is power upgrades, four-season capability and comfort theme, and getting rid of the generator. So for four-season capability, first step was always getting the warm window shades, which were inspired by Debbie Cheatamy. So this both insulates us in the winter and keeps the heat, keeps the cool in the summer. And then the other part was I want to get rid of propane. So one of the first things I did was get rid of the propane heater. To do that, I installed the diesel heater. Then that gets me into winter camping in a much more comfortable way. So the propane heater uses a lot of propane, uses a lot of battery power, and it doesn't heat very well. It's a wet heat. With the diesel heat, it's a continuous, silent, dry heat. It warms up the space, doesn't give you the condensation that you would normally have with the propane heater, and you can run it all night and barely use a gallon. I can open up the side, and you can kind of see where it is. There are a lot of videos online on how to do this. It's identical to any Mercedes van. It's in here.
Whoa, how did you get it in there?
Well, you take the seat off.
Oh, okay.
And then the only different thing I did was there's a Blue Sea breaker or fuse panel down there that I added. The ones that come with it's an S-Bar D2 heater with the elevation kit in it.
And then it blows through here.
Right. Yeah, and then Karin just did all the cloth work to make it look...
Okay, was it hard to remove that seat? Was it pretty easy?
Pretty easy. Yeah, just need the correct star bit. The wires for the power come out through here, power and the controller come through here, and I removed this lip and just ran them in underneath here. Mm-hmm. And then you can see a little bit of it here, and then I came up underneath and into the kitchen cabinet.
Anytime I talk about upgrades, there is someone who says that we spend all this money on a rig and it should be absolutely perfect. But the truth is the upfitters make a one-size-fits-all, and we don't all fit in that size. And we have different styles of travel. A few weeks back, Trish from Keep Your Daydreams, when they had rented a camper van, she made a comment that I thought was really spot on, which was that Class Bs were really made for adventures. And that is the way we travel. Now, of course, everyone doesn't travel that way, but I think the large majority of campervan people are adventurers. And they like to get out and do things and go from spot to spot. They're not going to park and kick back and do that kind of a lifestyle. So these upgrades that we talk about today are really geared toward that adventure kind of lifestyle. If you are a new campervan owner or want to be one, then you may think that you never want to put a single blemish in your new rig, and that's the way I was, so I totally understand that feeling. It took me 3 years before I was willing to actually screw in the paper towel holder because I was finally up to here with replacing it up on the Velcro.
So part of my four-season plan is I do need to winterize this when it gets below freezing. So I do winterize it often, and often being 3 or 4 times a season.
What method do you use?
I use an air compressor into the water lines, and I just blow them out.
Yeah.
So what I had to do was just I bolted on a piece of wood here. I screwed it in basically to the plywood. Yeah, because you can't just screw into this side of the plywood here, because it'll just split apart. This won't. Basically, it'll strip out. So I just took a piece of wood and I screwed it this way, which is the strong direction for the plywood, and then bolted the hinges
Is that
to that.
what size plywood? 3/4 inch, 1 inch?
3/4. So we just set the valves and then go out, and it only takes about 5-10 minutes with the air hose. So it's really quick. But once I get the courage to remove the heater, I'm going to make a plate here and put a solar connector here, just like the ZAMP connectors. So this is where I connect the external panel. And if you look up in there, there's a little block up there with all the Anderson connectors. It's just a bus bar block. It comes from the charge controller inside. The solar panel connection goes to here, and all the solar panels connect into this block. And then this is my refrigerator connector. Very important to use these ferrules instead of just putting the wire in. So if you put just bare wire in there and you screw down the terminal, the wire spreads, and you end up with only a couple of little strands actually connecting with the DC voltage.
One of the best things about having our van is that it has forced me to learn so much more about the mechanics of it, how the electronics work, all of that, and that's really a good thing. I just don't want, especially you ladies who may run away from technical kinds of stuff, not to do that. Just try to take the time to learn more about your systems so that they don't seem like a complete mystery, and you'll be able to kind of sleuth things out when you have an issue or some alarm goes off and you can't figure out why it is, or you need to replace a fuse or whatever it is, because things will go wrong just as they go wrong in your house.
But I've gone through the exercise of taking this apart, and I know how to get the heater out. And my original thinking was that's where I would put a Lithionics battery, but I've now found a better place for it.
Okay.
But I do want to use this as the charger equipment room. So I want to put my MPPT charge controller and the DC-DC converter in here.
Now the changing out of the lithium batteries is probably my fault, because I shared with Doug the video that George did on the Lithionics batteries, and they are pretty amazing. So I sent him that link, and then he started down that rabbit hole. The Lithionics battery is 315 amp hours. Now our 2 batteries is 200 amp hours, and on our roof we have 200 watts of solar. Doug wanted to get up to 600 amp hours of battery so that he could run his air conditioner.
The only thing I run the generator for is to run the air conditioner. My first goal is get enough power in there so that I can run it for 5 or 6 hours to about 50%, and that gives me 50% to run all the household appliances, plus we have 2 power-hungry laptops that we run all the time. And I wanted to run those for at least 2 days. Other reasons to do Lithionics, even if you didn't want to run your air conditioning, is that the batteries that Pleasureway puts in are not temperature protected. So that means if it runs too hot or if it runs too cold in the ambient temperature, and you charge your battery, which you do anytime you turn on the engine, you can damage the battery. So the Lithionics has a BMS that will cut off the charge if it goes above a certain temperature, and you can adjust that if you want. I leave it at the preset. But the biggest part is it has a built-in heater. So even if it's below 0, it'll heat its own core, so you can continue to charge it and run it during the winter.
Doug has posted a lot of his work on his YouTube channel, and I will post a link to that in the description box as well as across the screen, and you can check out his channel.
Probably 3 things you have to be concerned with. It's not as simple as just replacing the battery, because the charge circuits that Pleasureway puts in the van aren't compatible. The Lithionics has a very specific charge profile that you need to maintain. So I needed a battery solar controller that would handle, that I could program to no more than 14.4 volts and to float it at 13.4 volts once the battery is charged. So I chose the Victron MPPT controller. So I found that the 20 amp is considerably smaller. So I just built a small piece of wood that used the same holes as the Go Power, and mounted the Victron onto it, and then routed the wires underneath. Yeah, this I added to monitor the Pleasureway lithium batteries. This is disconnected now. I don't bother with this with the Lithionics because the Lithionics has a built-in battery monitor. But I found that the 20 amps is all you need, especially with the 200 on the roof, because that you can charge up to 20 amps. And out of the 190, the theoretical max is somewhere around 12. And even with my external panel, I can get to 22 with the external panel, but this will handle the higher voltage. It'll just cap you at a 20 amp output. The battery box that the Pleasureway puts in is 13 inches from the kick plate of the sofa, and the Lithionics batteries are 6 inches wide. So in the same space as the lithium batteries that come with Pleasureway, I can put 2 of the 315 amp Lithionics batteries and have more storage space.
Tell everybody the downside of the Lithionics battery.
$4,900.
Yeah, so for $5,000 you get 1 battery.
Right.
We are looking into a Lithionics battery system ourselves, and John is in discussions right now, and we'll see how that goes. There is someone apparently that can install these in the Northwest, I think up in Washington, and that's where we would go if we decide to go that route.
So that was step 1 to get the charger compatible with Lithionics. The second step was charging from the alternator was also not compatible. There's a company, Nations, that makes second alternator kits for the Sprinter van. So they have a 150 amp, which would work with a single Lithionics battery. But I really want to get to the 280 amp version of it, and I need at least 2 in there.
So there's the Lithionics battery.
Yep, this is the first stage. So I installed it basically so that I could start removing the battery box and the batteries and still have access to the van. I installed the DC-DC charge controller back here.
Oh.
Under here, I guess on my site, my channel, I've got videos of all of this. George inspired. This is the Lithionics battery. I figured out. It's actually, this is a little bit bigger, just so to cover this. But if you put this where this box is, from a distance, I'm going to gain all of this storage. Each battery cage has over 20 screws just to hold it into the cabinet. And I've only unscrewed one of those. I've unscrewed the door, which has another 10 or 12 screws in that pull-down drawer.
Doug's going to show how he can run the AC on battery.
So we're plus 4 amps now. Okay.
AC running on batteries.
Right. And
Whoa.
88 amps, 87, 90.
Wow.
And the compressor just came on.
During one of the breaks we had to take because my cell phone kept overheating, we sat down and we started talking about a product that Doug had purchased several years ago. He had told me about it and I had looked into it, but I'm glad I didn't. And here's his story. I just asked Doug about a Zero Breeze that he had purchased, what, a couple years ago?
Yeah, that was my first attempt at cooling down the van in the summer, because I go out and use it as a mobile office. The afternoon gets really hot, so I thought this was it. But unfortunately, at least the first version, I know they have a new version. First version, it worked great for an hour. It was blowing out cool air, and I thought, this is heaven. And then about an hour later, the exhaust started heating up and heated the van more than it could cool. So I've been looking for a better backup camera for the Mercedes, because the camera only shines down. Yes. I can't see back when I'm backing in places. So I found this it was just in Costco, but it's for a license plate cover, and it works really well. It has a very good display, and it's a little display that mounts on the windshield, and it's got guidelines, and it's very accurate. So just to prototype it, I just taped it to this step that I use, and just plugged it in here, and it just turns out to be just the right height. So if you install this on the Mercedes, it's offset, so you can't use the guidelines. It's not centered. But if you mount it here, it's perfect, perfect alignment. So I took it apart. You can see it's all apart.
It's called Type S?
Yeah, it's Costco sells it for like $100, and it's solar charged. It's got a battery in here. So my next step is I just tested it to see if it works, and it does. So now what I'm going to do is take a Dremel tool and cut off this area, and take this and epoxy it to the top, and then I'm going to epoxy it to the step. So then it'll be self-contained, solar charged, and just, you know, this step which I carry here anyway. It also has a video output jack on it. So once I get this done, epoxied in, you know, my plan is to run the output into a separate video input on the radio I installed in the dash.
The next update is on the blind lane assist that we have on the Mercedes chassis. And it had stopped working after we had the rear spare tire carrier put on the van. And when I took it into a mechanic this last week for our 60,000 mile service, he said he believes it is because that the bar comes down a little bit too far and interferes with the vision of the sensor, which is inside of the bumper. So we will probably not worry about it because you don't really need one on the left side. The one on the right side works well. So I just wanted you guys to know that if any of you are getting spare tire holders and you have that lane assist mechanism in your van, it may cause a problem. And then finally, I was going to update you guys on the warm window curtains because I've been kind of reworking those and making some improvements. I'm going to save that for a dedicated video so I can show you a little bit more of the steps that I took. And that'll be in a few weeks' time. So please keep your comments and your questions coming, your suggestions for upgrades. I kind of see ourselves as guinea pigs. We'll try it out and see if it works before you go out and spend your hard-earned money. If you have any questions and comments, please put them below. If you have questions for Doug, please go to his channel because he has a lot of videos posted about his upgrades, and ask them there. That's probably easier for him. And until next time, thanks so much for watching. Glad we're not going that way.